Hello and welcome to another episode with Kinsey Tech as we continue our journey into SOQL, SOQL, structured or Salesforce object query language. And we're going to continue talking about aggregate functions. Let me share my screen and let's get to the subject. So when we talk about aggregate functions, think about them as summarized functions. In other words, let's say I do have 100 opportunities. If I want to count how many opportunities I have, I'm not going to get 100 values. I'm just going to get one value that I have, let's say 44 or 48 opportunities. If I want to see what's the maximum amount, what's the largest amount, what's the biggest sale that we had, what's the largest amount of an opportunity that we have, I'm going to get back one value. If I'm looking for the lowest, the minimum value, I'm looking at one. So those are called aggregate functions in the fact that we are getting what's called a roll-up and a summary on our data. So let's start looking at some of those. So for example, I want to see how many names do I have for opportunities, because not all the fields might be populated. So in this case, I'll type in select name from the object name, which is opportunity. And since I want to get a count on the name, I'm going to put a count and then name between braces or brackets, and let's execute it. And it says I have 48 opportunity names. What about amounts? Because not all the amounts are populated. Maybe I have 3 or 4 that don't have amounts. So let's do a select count. And here we're going to put amount. I want to execute. This number is probably going to change because I have 4 that don't, and I have 44 that have amounts with them. So this is an example of an aggregate function. So we have counts, we have sum, we have minimum, we have maximum. Let's take another one. I want to see what's the largest amount within my opportunities that I have, dollar amount. And in this case, this is the largest amount, the maximum amount. What's the lowest amount that I have? Minimum. And that's the minimum. What's my average amount? Going through those 44 amounts, the average amount is, so AVG is short for average. And that's the average amount that we have out there. So those are what we call aggregate functions. Now comes a little trick. And the trick is, if I want to get an aggregate function along with one that's not aggregated, now I have 2 fields. What do I need to do to my query to make sure that it works? In other words, I want to get the name. So I'm not aggregating the name, but I'm aggregating the count. I want to see how many amounts do I have for this company? How many amounts do I have for this company? How many amounts do I have for this company? So I'm selecting the name of the company and then the number or the count of amounts that we have for it, the name of this company and the number of amounts that we have for it, the name of this company. So here I'm just selecting the name, comma, and I'm also getting an aggregate function. So I'm getting the count of amounts. So I need to do what's called a grouping, and I need to group the one that's not aggregated. So the name is not aggregated, so I need to group by name. Let's see how that works. So I'm going to have select name, comma, count. I'm counting how many amounts I have from opportunity. Since the name is not aggregate function, then I'm going to do a group by name. Let's execute this. And sure enough, and let's order this descending, we're going to see that I have the company United All Installations, and I have 3 amounts or 3 opportunities there. I have Burlington Textiles, 2 amounts or 2 opportunities there, and so on. So this is an example of an aggregate function where we're adding multiple fields. So all the fields that are not in here, that are not in the aggregate function, we need to group by. In case we forget to group by, SOQL is going to be very quick to alert us to it. So let's hit and execute. And it's going to say field must be grouped or aggregated. Which field? Name field. It has to be aggregated or grouped. So sure enough, it means that we need to go in and type group by name, because it sees it up here and it's not aggregated. So it says down here, you have to group by it. Okay, let's take another example we have where, okay, so this is our example. Now, one function that's really needed a lot and is used a lot is the duplicate. A lot of times, whether you're a Salesforce architect, whether you're a developer, whether you're an admin or a business analyst, a continuous issue that we have is duplicate data, whether it's leads or accounts or just contacts that are duplicate. So we want to get our accounts real quick and see, do I have any duplicate accounts or duplicate contacts? So let's take a couple of examples of duplicates. So we're going to go to the accounts, and see how we can do that. So here's a sample query. And again, this is, if you go to Kinsey Tech on the chapter, be able to download the file and execute it. But let's read it together. So it's select name, and we're counting the ID. So remember, usually the first column, the first field in any object is the ID field. If I have an account object, the first field is the account ID. If I create a custom object called customer service, then the first ID, the first field is going to be the customer service ID. So the ID is what makes it unique normally. So in accounts, we have an account ID. So we're selecting the name and the count for the IDs. And then we're grouping by the name. So up until here, this is very straightforward. But then we're looking for where we have more than one ID. So if I have a company called, the oil company, for example, and it has more than one ID, then that's considered to be a duplicate based on the name. So let's go ahead and run this. And we're going to see that we have Bank of America with more than one ID. It has it 2 times. So now I have that that's a duplicate record. I have Bank of America in there twice. If I added more, then it's going to tell me that I added more. So let's look at our contacts and see if we have any duplicate contacts. In that case, we're going to type in select. But this time I want to do 2 fields, not just one field. I want to check both the first name and the last name. For it to be a duplicate, it can't just be the last name or the first name with my contacts or any custom object that you have. So I'm going to have first name, comma, last name. And I'm counting, of course, the IDs to make sure if there's more than one ID. From contact, the 2 fields that are not aggregated. So I need to group by that. So group by first name, comma, last name. But now this is the condition we add to check where we have more than one ID. So having count ID more than 1. So let's execute it. And it's going to say that those 4 records, we have a Mahgoub Osman 2 times. We have a Zainab Fadl 2 times. We have a Yara without a last name 2 times. So this is an example of how we can find duplicate records. And this is a very important query, whether you'd have one field that tells you what's a duplicate or multiple fields. Make sure to use this logic of selecting the field or fields and then the count of the IDs. And then from the object, of course, you're selecting it from, you group it by those fields that are not aggregated, and then having a count ID more than 1. And very quickly, that will kind of give you that information immediately. All right. Best of luck, and we'll see you in the next episode.